Okay. Emery Makomeno, thank you so much for that update, joining us from Kinshasa. But that's all the time we had for today's program. Thanks for tuning in. From me, Wahiga Mwaura, and the rest of the Focus on Africa team. See you next week. Goodbye.
Hello, live from London, this is BBC News. Israeli tanks mount a new assault into southern Gaza's main city, Khan Yunis, after intense airstrikes and street fighting. The United States has strongly criticized the Israeli Prime Minister's rejection of any need for a Palestinian state once the conflict in Gaza is over. Japan's space agency confirms its unmanned moon probe has landed on the lunar surface. And Prince Harry withdraws his libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. Hello, I'm Lucy Gray. Welcome to the Daily Global, where we'll bring you the top stories from around the world. Israeli tanks have mounted a new assault into southern Gaza's main city, Khan Yunis, after intense airstrikes and street fighting. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Look at some other stories making the news now. Thousands of Houthi supporters have again massed in the Yemeni capital for a major demonstration. The protest in Sana'a follows a week of US airstrikes against Houthi positions aimed at curbing attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by the Iranian-backed group. Large-scale protests have been a regular occurrence since the war between Israel and Hamas started in October, but have escalated since the airstrikes began. Pakistan's foreign minister has said his country is ready to work with Iran on all issues after the two countries attacked alleged militant bases on each other's territories. In a telephone conversation with his Iranian counterpart, Jalil Abbas Jalani also underscored the need for closer cooperation on security issues. Iran hasn't commented yet. Demonstrations have been held in several German cities to protest against right-wing extremism. They're in reaction to reports of a meeting last year where extremist politicians discuss plans to expel millions of people with immigrant backgrounds. It comes as the German parliament has passed a new law allowing migrants to become German nationals more quickly. Now, you're live with BBC News. Japan's space agency has confirmed that its unmanned moon probe has landed successfully on the lunar surface, but it says that the device's solar generators aren't working and it's relying on its onboard batteries, which will supply only a few hours of power. This is a simulation of the Smart Lander for Investigating Moon, or SLIM as it's known, beginning its descent. Okay, they're still talking about what's happened. In terms of, is there anything else that you're hoping to hear from, in terms of any other questions that you're waiting to hear the answer to?
So I would love to get the answer about these solar panels, and honestly, I just love to see some pictures on the lunar surface. That would be brilliant. And absolutely, you know, how close were we within that 100 meters? Were we exactly on target? Were we 50 meters out? Were we 25 meters out? That's what I would really like to hear. Anything else is a bonus.
We'll see. The press is still going on. We'll see if they mention it. Thank you very much, Dr. Jennifer Millard, astronomer and presenter of Awesome Astronomy Podcast. Stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News, the headlines. Israeli tanks mount a new assault into southern Gaza's main city, Khan Yunis, after intense airstrikes and street fighting. The United States has strongly criticised the Israeli Prime Minister's rejection of any need for a Palestinian state once the conflict in Gaza is over. And confirmation that thousands of jobs will go at Tata Steel as the firm closes blast furnaces at Britain's biggest steelworks in South Wales. Prince Harry withdraws his libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. It's nearly 2 years since the case was filed. Let's get more now on our top story and the criticism of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he dismissed the possibility of a Palestinian sovereignty, informing the US that Israel needed control over all of the West Bank and Gaza for its security. The US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said it was clear that Washington saw things differently. The Biden administration has said that the creation of a Palestinian state is the only way to ensure Israel's lasting security and the reconstruction of Gaza. Well, let's go live now to Stephen Simon, a professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Washington, who formerly served on the National Security Council for the Middle East. Thanks very much to you. What do you make of what's this very sort of publicly rejecting what the US is calling for from Israel? Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Watching BBC News, the World Economic Forum in Davos finishes today. The 5-day meeting between business and political leaders traditionally looks at evolving trends and global threats. So one of this year's themes was AI as a driving force for the economy and society. There's been some scepticism on the role of AI, but President of Global Affairs at Meta and the UK's former Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg said that we should embrace the technology.
I'm not sure what the context means.
We're going to leave that there, answering questions about President Biden's phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll have plenty more on this later in the programme. Do stay with us. Hello, live from London, this is BBC News. The senior Fujitsu boss tells the Post Office inquiry it was well known that there were bugs in the computer system from the start. Confirmation that thousands of jobs will go at Tata Steel as the firm closes blast furnaces at Britain's biggest steelworks in South Wales. Israeli tanks mount a new assault into southern Gaza's main city Khan Yunis after intense airstrikes and street fighting. The United States has strongly criticised the Israeli Prime Minister's rejection of any need for a Palestinian state once the conflict in Gaza is over. Japan's space agency confirms its unmanned moon probe has landed on the lunar surface but has lost solar power. And Prince Harry withdraws his libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. Hello, I'm Lucy Gray. Welcome to the Daily Global, where we'll bring you the top stories from around the world. The boss of Fujitsu's European operations has admitted that although the company knew for many years of bugs and errors in the computer system, details of this were not included in witness statements by Fujitsu employees around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Right, let's take a look at some other stories making the news now. The bodies of 4 people, 2 of them children, have been found at a house near Norwich. Norfolk police said that officers forced their way into an address in Cossey this morning after a call from a member of the public. Detectives leading the case believe it is an isolated incident. The Met Office has named the next storm to hit the UK, which is set to bring gusts of up to 80 miles per hour over the weekend. Storm Aisha will hit the UK on Sunday, with amber weather warnings issued for wind in northern and western England, Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland. People are urged to be cautious. British retailers suffered the biggest drop in sales in almost 3 years in December, raising the risk that the economy entered a recession in the fourth quarter. Official figures reveal a sharp fall in demand for goods, but also food sales in the run-up to Christmas by 3.2%. Data appeared to show people did their shopping earlier, taking advantage of Black Friday sales. You're watching BBC News. Now, Prince Harry has withdrawn his libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. The Duke of Sussex had sued Associated Newspapers over an article about his security arrangements after stepping back as a senior royal. In an article on the Mail Online website, the paper said that the Prince had abandoned his case hours before a court deadline. Our media correspondent David Silito reports. Right, that's all for this half hour from me. Do stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News, the headlines. A senior Fujitsu boss tells the Post Office inquiry it was well known that there were bugs in the computer system from the start. Confirmation that thousands of jobs will go at Tata Steel as the firm closes blast furnaces at Britain's biggest steelworks in South Wales. Israeli tanks mount a new assault into southern Gaza's main city Khan Yunis after intense airstrikes and street fighting. The White House says President Biden still believes in future Palestinian statehood after Benjamin Netanyahu publicly rejected a two-state solution. And Prince Harry withdraws his libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. It's nearly 2 years since the case was filed. The Indian company Tata Steel has confirmed plans to close blast furnaces at its plant in Port Talbot, which is Britain's biggest steelworks, with the loss of up to 2,800 jobs. Tata said in a statement that Tata Steel today announced it will commence statutory consultation as part of its plan to transform and restructure its UK business. This plan is intended to reverse more than a decade of losses and transition from the legacy blast furnaces to a more sustainable green steel business. A government spokesperson said the UK is determined to secure a sustainable and competitive future for its steel sector. The government has committed £500 million towards the cost of the new electric arc furnace. Here's Tata Steel CEO and Managing Director speaking about the cuts. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
BBC News, bringing you different stories from across the UK. For more stories from across the UK, head to the BBC News website.
You're watching BBC News. Now, measles could spread rapidly in some parts of the UK unless more children are vaccinated. That's the warning from the head of the UK's Health Security Agency, who says vaccination rates are well below what's recommended. Measles is highly contagious and can lead to serious complications, including meningitis, blindness and seizures. More than 200 cases of the disease have been confirmed in the central England recently. Here's our health editor, Hugh Pym. Mark Savage there talking to Matthew a little earlier. Just a reminder of our breaking news that's come through in the last half hour. Alec Baldwin has been indicted by a grand jury in New Mexico on new charges of involuntary manslaughter stemming from the shooting of a cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, on the movie set of the Western film Rust. Prosecutors dismissed charges against him back in April, just 2 weeks before the start of his trial. Now you're watching BBC News. Making a pet abduction a specific offence in England and Northern Ireland got a step closer today. The Pet Abduction Bill cleared its first Commons hurdle and got the backing of the Prime Minister because, according to a spokesperson, he recognises that dogs and cats are part of our family. Currently, pets are legally just considered property, but in recognition of the emotional value of pets and the distress to owners if they're stolen, under the new law, anyone who abducts a dog or a cat could face up to 5 years in prison. Let's speak now to Lisa Dean, who runs Beauty's Legacy, a charity that reunites lost and stolen animals with their owners, which she set up after her cat was stolen. Are you just able to briefly tell us what happened to your cat? Okay, well, thank you very much for talking to us. Thanks very much. That's Lisa Dean, who runs Beauty's Legacy. Right, that's all from me for now. Thanks very much for your company. Just a reminder that there's plenty more on all the stories we're covering on the BBC website. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Hello there, good evening. It's all change weather-wise as we head through this weekend.